Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Miller, Solutions Engineer on the DJI Enterprise team, and today on this Geospatial course we're going to be talking a little bit more about PPK, or Post-Process Kinematic. I would highly suggest that you review Run's course first. Run's course was on RTK, or Real-Time Kinematic, and once you've reviewed that, some of these basics should be able to make a little bit more sense. So as we get started, let's talk about what content we're going to be covering. So we're going to do an introduction into PPK. What is PPK? Also, we're going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages, or the differences between RTK and PPK, and why you would choose one over the other and what situations make the most sense there. We'll also be talking about the PPK drone operation, the required components for you to go out and do a survey with PPK. Also, the different collection methods where you can be getting corrections from, the PPK data processing steps and what that means in Terra, and then we'll be wrapping up with some frequently asked questions. So post-process kinematic, what does that mean? It's a method of correcting the data after the flight has been taking place and the data has been captured. That's the important thing. You're going to be logging your corrections very much independently of capturing of the drone. And then when it comes to the data getting corrected, that's where PPK, post-processed, makes sense, where you're going to be doing the corrections later. RTK is going to be a little bit different, obviously, like you've learned before, where you're going to be getting those corrections fed to the drone in real time. We're not going to be doing that here. We'll be doing that at a later time. This can be corrected after the flight has been occurred, hence post-processed. Once the flight has been completed, both the drone geotag data and the base station data are matched together. And data accuracy, typically, the accuracy ranges from 1 to 5 centimeters. A lot of that just depends on the area size that you're going to be scanning, how far away you are from a base station, as well as just general errors that can pop up. So very much similar accuracy as RTK, but there are some advantages with PPK. So what are those advantages and what are the main differences? Well, you can see on the right-hand side here a walkthrough of PPK and RTK, where PPK, you're going to have the drone connected to satellite as well as a corrections device. That may be a CORS network that you're able to download log data from. It may be a base station that you have on site, but that base station doesn't have to be talking to the controller, doesn't really have to be talking to the drone. It just needs to be logging static data or be set up over a known point. So you can see the positional logs and the correction logs will come into post-processing software to do those corrections for you. Whereas RTK, you have that live corrected position happen real time. So the advantages of PPK: no connectivity requirements between base station and drone. So think about when you're going out and capturing in those really difficult environments, really difficult terrain. RTK can be very cumbersome to make sure that you maintain connectivity, because the moment that you drop RTK, your data starts becoming more and more inaccurate. So because you need to be maintaining that and getting those live corrections. Also, the data integrity, you're going to be logging things independently, and so you can make sure that the data is very accurate as much as you possibly can. You can't verify it until you process the data, but you can nearly guarantee your data integrity as well as data accuracy. There's also an advantage to cost, so there's no subscriptions that you may need to have if you are looking to do RTK or getting corrections real time. If you go the PPK route, it's typically a more affordable solution to get a complete surveying workflow that you don't have to pay for a subscription at any later time. Some of the disadvantages to PPK: it is more time consuming. You are needing to get in the corrections from the positional logs and have to do that in a post-processing software, where RTK, we're just assuming everything is good and rolling with those geotags. There's also little in-field data quality checking because your drone data, what you're pulling off the SD card at the end of the day, really isn't going to be very accurate because it's not corrected yet. And then the logs is just something that you won't really be able to know until you get back to the computer that the logs were good, whether it's from a CORS network. There are some things that you can do with the base station to make sure that your logs are good. But overall, it's a little bit harder for in-field data quality checking compared to RTK. So let's talk about the different scenarios and where you'd want to use PPK over RTK. I did mention one of those earlier, where you're in very remote surveys with poor CORS network connectivity, so you may not have for RTK an end trip or something where you're going to be getting live corrections that may be far away, or you may have connectivity where it's really poor, or for internet connectivity even, so something that you're going to be getting those corrections for, or even the connectivity between the drone and the controller. It's something that we dealt with in Guatemala when we were flying LiDAR surveys and having to maintain connectivity with the drone when you had a complete canopy of trees about 100 feet tall. Made it really, really difficult. And so being able to just do PPK and correct at a later time became more valuable rather than having to make sure that we were connected with RTK the whole time. Also, large area or large scale surveys where the drone may fly far away from the base station, you're getting less issue comparative to RTK, where you're seeing more drift farther away from the base station you are. Scenarios where RTK is most beneficial: if you're trying to do quick or small surveys, if you're trying to pack lightly, you can just use your phone to hotspot and you don't have to mess with the base station. Or if you do have access to a CORS station that's close by. So what are the required components to go out and start scanning with PPK? So unlike RTK, the only requirements is a base station to reference. Both the drone and the reference station will log data independently. It is not important or required to keep connection between the base station and the drone. While the requirements in the field are fewer for PPK, post-processing, like I mentioned before, is more time-consuming. So there's going to be additional steps for stripping the GPS metadata from the drone imagery and then matching up the timed log location data from your base station or from a CORS network or VRS network, and from there correct from the time that you captured those photos and get the real locations for them. So a bit of a workflow there. The collection methods, there are a couple different ways of logging or getting PPK corrections. Those methods can include downloading log data from a CORS or VRS network, so being able to see something that may be close by that you can reference to. A non-DJI third-party base station, RTK base station, basically anything that can log static, or if it can't log static, you definitely need to be setting it up over at known point, which is why on the third one, a DJI DRTK base station is definitely an option too. You don't have to use a third party. You can utilize our base station. We'll talk through each one of these different methods. So with CORS network, this method requires operation fairly close to a fixed base station. These stations are located most around the world and are known as CORS networks. These networks offer an online portal typically where log data can be accessed via a RINEX file. So you will go in, put in the time that you were surveying with your drone. Typically you will add additional time previous and at the end of the mission. Then all of those corrections you can download from a server, and then that file will be important for doing the post-processing with matching up. Pros, you really no need for an additional base station and related equipment like tripods, batteries. It's something that you can just reference at a different time. But cons, many CORS networks do require a paid subscriptions. Operations are region-based and based on the service coverage. It's not recommended to use a base station with a baseline over 6 miles away, as the global accuracy is starting to decrease dramatically the farther away you get from one of these CORS networks. So if you are close to one, it does make it a bit easier to be able to reference. But then again, if you are trying to be very much completely remote and be able to do this yourself without having to reference anything else, you can utilize a third-party base station. The pros here is you're going to have global operation without service coverage limitations. So as long as the base station can see and log satellite data for at least 15 minutes, 2 hours or more, just depending on what type of accuracy that your client may need, then that's all you need. It's just to make sure that you are getting good corrections. Cons: the base station and the associated gear such as tripod and batteries are needed, so you're going to need to lug those around. If it's a very remote job, that can be cumbersome to carry a base station and a drone with you. It can also be a longer setup on site because you're not getting the corrections real time. You need to log static for a certain amount of time to make sure you have good corrections before you can start capturing drone data. Or at least you want to make sure that the time on site that you have is long enough for your base station to get good PPK corrections. And then I've nailed on this before, data processing time is more time consuming. And then the third option, utilizing our mobile station. Pros, it's very similar to using a third-party base station where you're having that global operation without service coverage limitations. Some of the cons, the one thing to highlight here is the DRTK2 requires to be set up on a known surveyed point to be captured if you are looking for global accuracy. So you can get high relative accuracy, not over a known surveyed point, but if you are looking to reference with global accuracy, of course you're going to need to set up the DRTK2 over a known reference point if that is the base station you're using. So let's talk about the workflow to kind of wrap things up and what you will need to do. So you have gone out, you have captured the data with a drone that has a RTK module on it, so you're getting connectivity to satellites. You're also getting getting a source of corrections. Maybe that's a base station that you have on site. Once you're done flying and once you're done logging the data, you're going to take the images off the SD card. You're going to connect a smart device typically to your base station and then pull off those corrections. If you are looking to do the DRTK2, we do have user guides online that you can walk through the workflow of taking the corrections off of the base station. Once you have those files, then you're going to walk through the post-processing workflow. So that's where you're going to utilize your PPK correction software of choice, where Terra, it's something that we are getting into as well. But from there, you're going to utilize your PPK correction software of choice to merge those corrections, and override those onto the image POS data. DJI Terra allows users then to utilize the Rhinox file that you're getting out of your PPK correction software of choice, usually as a text or a CSV, from the base station or the CORS network. You're going to be importing the data into Terra. You will select Import POS Data icon and select Edit. And this is where you're going to be overriding the image POS data with that newly corrected POS data. So something that you can utilize DJI Terra to do. You will obviously need a PPK correction software of choice if you are not using Terra for those corrections. And then once you have those corrections, then you're overriding the image POS data. Then from there, you're just going to post-process the data set with the newly corrected data. So hopefully that's not too, step 3 and 4 aren't too difficult, but essentially, yes, get your text or CSV of a Rhinox file from your corrections and then merge that on Terra with your image POS data. So from there, let's talk about some frequently asked questions about why you'd use PPK, when you'd use PPK, and some of the stuff that we've already covered. So how much does the distance away from your core station change my data accuracy? We did say 6 miles earlier. It's recommended to be within 6 miles of that corrections location, but ultimately 12 miles is the farthest you should be getting. Anything farther than that, we would not guarantee the data accuracy. So recommended within 6 miles. 12 miles is going to be about the farthest away. How long do I need to let my base station log data before I can trust the accuracy? So if you are on site and you are using your own base station to log the corrections, 15 minutes minimum, but ideally industry standard is having it to log for at least 2 hours. Why is PPK easier to manage for data collection? Connectivity between the base station and the drone isn't required, so losing connection to the drone doesn't affect the data accuracy. The moment that your drone and your controller and your base station aren't kind of all talking together with RTK is the moment that you're letting in issues with the error. But with PPK, since you don't have to be connected, you just need to know that the drone is logging good accurate static as well, the base station is logging good accurate static and the drone is connected to satellites. What does RINEX mean? RINEX is Receiver Independent Exchange Format, and it's a data interchange format for raw satellite navigation system data. So from there, you're taking your RINEX data and matching that up with the time that each image was taken and overriding the image POS or the positional data from the data that was from RINEX. Apologies. And then last question, what sampling rate should I set my base station to log at? We would say 1 hertz minimum is recommended. The higher you have it set at, the shorter your battery life is because you're logging more frequently, but we do recommend at least 1 hertz minimum. That concludes the PPK workflow or the PPK course. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team, and we hope that you continue on with the next geospatial course. Thank you.